The Arkansas Razorbacks have exceeded many people's preseason expectations of them coming into the season. They were expected to be one of, if not the worst teams in the SEC, but have been a very competitive team most of the year, with a big statement win and a massive upset against the Tennessee Volunteers, where their defense was absolutely incredible. They have some playmakers on the defensive front, but the big standout star for the Razorbacks is edge rusher Landon Jackson. Jackson is a player who was on my radar last year, as I expected him to come out in the 2024 draft, but he returned to Fayetteville for another season and has had a very productive one and has the potential to be taken very high in the 2025 NFL draft. How high could we ultimately see Jackson taken in an absolutely loaded edge rusher group at the top? That is what we will be discussing in today's video. But hey guys, if you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon page. For $5 a month, you guys will get exclusive access to my in-depth draft guide and scouting reports for over 550 prospects in the 2025 draft class. I am constantly adding new players, and with the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl sending out their invites currently, now is the perfect time to get familiar with some of these players your team may end up drafting. Leave a comment and let me know which players you guys would like to see in a future video. And without further ado, let's take a closer look at Landon Jackson. Jackson has been a very productive player for Arkansas for the last couple of seasons. He really burst onto the scene in 2023, where he finished the year with 22 total pressures, 7 sacks, and 31 total tackles for the Razorbacks, and it really surprised people when he came back to school for the 2024 season, but it looks like he made the right decision as he's having a career year for Arkansas. He has produced 32 total pressures, 5 sacks, and 26 total tackles, and he has some really interesting upside in the 2025 draft class. Jackson has absolutely ridiculous size for the edge rusher position. He is 6'7", 280 pounds, and has freakishly long arms to go alongside of it. The craziest part about Jackson, though, is he doesn't look nearly this big, and he still has quite a bit of room to continue to add mass onto his body. He is an absolute freak in terms of his size, and that is something I think teams are going to fall in love with, because I think that gives him a ton of versatility. Arkansas has lined him up in a number of different places on their defensive line, and I think Jackson is one of the more versatile defensive players in this draft class. My favorite part about Landon Jackson is his incredibly high motor. He is a player who is in constant pursuit of the quarterback, and he does not stop moving his legs. He has some solid upper body strength, and he shows the ability to push tackles back into the pocket and create pressure, but I also like what he does with his hands. His hands are constantly moving, he's constantly trying to leverage himself to get into the backfield, and he shows a really nice cross-chop move, and he's got good change of direction, I do feel like, and I think he has some real appeal as a pass rush threat at the next level. Jackson is also a fantastic run defender. He sets the edge incredibly well, and he does an awesome job of closing run lanes. He may not have the greatest tackling consistency in the world, but he penetrates gaps and is constantly making plays in order to stop the run. He has accumulated 55 run stops over the last 2 years, which is super solid for an edge rusher. The biggest issue with Jackson is his athleticism. He doesn't provide much burst, nor does he have much speed or quickness to get into the backfield. Teams are always looking for tools along the defensive line, and Jackson just doesn't bring a lot of burst off the line of scrimmage, which I think does limit his overall upside. I also think Jackson plays way too high. He has good power in his game, however he doesn't show it super often simply because he lines up so high at the line of scrimmage and his pads are way too high. He has to do a better job of playing low to the ground, having that low center of gravity, and generating that power from his lower body. If he can do that, I think he could be a pretty nice power rusher in the NFL, but it is an area that is too inconsistent for him right now. Lastly, while Jackson shows some really nice pass rush moves at times, it is very inconsistent. It feels like he is often struggling to combo moves in order to create pressure, and I don't think he has a go-to pass rush move that will help him get off blocks consistently at the next level, and that is a concern that I have. Jackson has absolutely incredible size, strength, and run defense for the edge rush position. I think he brings a defensive line so much versatility and upside, but he feels very much like a project, given the lack of a deep pass rush tool belt and his limited athleticism. The edge class is absolutely loaded, and Jackson is my number 13 edge rusher in the draft class. I know that number sounds bad, but this class is absolutely loaded, and I think there are some better overall players at the top with a little bit more athleticism and pass rush upside. That being said, Jackson is still a player that I would take in the second round, and he graded out as my number 65 overall player in the draft class. We have talked about the versatility a couple of times for Landon Jackson, but I think he profiles best as a 3-4 defensive end. He works best with his hand in the dirt, attached to the line of scrimmage, and I think given his strength and power, he works best in a 3-4 scheme. He can come down, close running lanes, but I also think this gives him a little bit more one-on-one assignments with guards and tackles, where I think he thrives in those opportunities, and I think he's a perfect fit for a 3-4 defensive end. Jackson reminds me a lot of Jacksonville Jaguars edge rusher Arik Armstead. Armstead is a player who has played nearly everywhere along the defensive line throughout his career and has been a very productive player. Both of them have incredibly long arms, but are not the greatest athletes in the world. They're good run defenders, have pass rush upside, and I see a lot of similarities not just in terms of size, but I also think they have a very similar play style overall. Landon Jackson has freakishly long arms. He is a big edge rusher who is still a bit of a project, but the upside is certainly there. He is a player who I think is going to develop really nicely if a team can figure out how to dive into this pass rush upside that he does show, and ultimately, I believe that Landon Jackson will be a second round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft.